This podcast is brought to you by Rainbarrel. Rainbarrel is a cookieless consented audience graph that helps advertisers interact with their best fit customers. Digital advertising shouldn't be a black box, which is why Rainbarrel was created by media buyers for media buyers. With over 12,000 public audiences, Rainbarrel has helped renowned brands like a large golf retailer explode their campaign reach by millions just by tapping into the right audience for golf course and country club visitors. Try out Rainbarrel audiences on DV360, The Trade Desk, LiveRamp, and beyond, or learn more at rbarrel.com. That's rbarrel.com. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. I'm Ari Paparo. I'm joined today by Eric Franchi.
Hello.
And Kerel Cooper, the president of advertising for Group Black. Kerel, thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here. Great to join you guys. Been listening to the pod for some time now, and honored to be a part of the alumni that have been guests on the podcast.
So you and I have known each other since your stint as CMOs of Live Intent. I apologize. I'm not a listener to your podcast, but I hear it's on 175 episodes, The Minority Report.
Yeah, so Eric Rickenden and I started the Minority Report podcast in 2018, really out of a need for us to create a platform for diverse leaders across advertising, business, and media, because, thinking about that point in time, less representation then than there is today, although there's still work to be done there. And so Eric and I said, instead of complaining about it, let's create our own platform and give diverse leaders the opportunity to tell their story. And while we do get into some business conversation on the podcast, it is more about the individual in terms of their background, their upbringing, their culture, their beliefs, how they got into business, media, and technology. And then we leave room in there for advice as well, too. And so our goal is to create the largest catalog of content of diverse leaders to leave behind for the next generation that's coming after us.
That's awesome. And if you need someone to sell your ads, you have my number.
So on may take you up on that.
On podcast news, so this was the debut of a new podcast. Eric has a side gig here. Eric, tell us about Open Market, because I thought the first episode was really great.
Thank you very much. What does the world need? Another podcast with me on it as part of the Marketecture Network. I mean, we're just fulfilling the demand in the marketplace. So Open Market is a pod that is co-hosted by me and Joe Zappa, who's been on this pod before. And, we saw, this sort of need and opportunity to not have another news focused podcast, but, have something that's a little bit more about building companies, growing companies, kind of just executing in the advertising technology space and sort of, enabling services. So we're going to have conversations based on that. Joe he's a super talented guy, and he has a journalistic background. So the conversations are different. And, I think he draws, interesting insights out of me and out of others. So first episode was posted this week. We're going to go weekly. We've got a backlog already, and it's been so far a ton of fun. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Open Market. Smash that subscribe button. All right, let's talk about Group Black. So I'm going to read what Group Black says on its website. A first-of-its-kind media collective and accelerator rooted in the advancement of Black-owned media properties. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think let me rephrase that a little bit, and I think by rephrasing that, I'll explain what it means. So I think the best way to think about Group Black today is we are a media company dedicated to connecting brands with diverse audiences and helping brands build sustainable relationships with those audiences. And we do it in a number of different ways, which I'm happy to dive deep into. But sort of our main three buckets of product offering is media, which is essentially the representation of our collective and other partners that we have, which we have consolidated into sort of a large scale media offering, which includes, your standard display, online video, CTV, audio. We offer that up through programmatic channels. We also have what we call a data cloud product, which helps reach about 97% of the internet. But what we do within that, we can certainly carve up different audiences and segments to help marketers reach that at scale. We also have an AVOD product called 365 Days of Black Excellence, which is essentially we represent the Black-centric shows that sit within Peacock. So we represent that inventory in the marketplace. And so collectively, that is our media offering. We also have what I like to call our content offering, which breaks down into creators. So thinking about when we're talking to agencies and brands about their strategy in terms of working with creators, in terms of being on social platforms and creating unique content, we have the ability to connect the brands with the right influencer to help execute different levels of content. And then within that too, distribution. So we will work with original creators of content and help them with their distribution strategy. We can leverage our collective for that, but we also have a partnership with Disney, where Disney is a distribution partner. And then our last offering is experiential. So thinking about how do we help brands connect with their audiences in unique ways in person. We ran a very successful HBCU campaign last year where we were on campuses during the beginning of the school year, welcoming students back to school, and also during a homecoming, and had brands set up there to activate as well too. So, at a high level, those are sort of how we think about helping brands connect with diverse audiences at scale.
And in the experiential stuff, is Group Black a brand that consumers are seeing, or is it just behind the scenes?
Yes. So think of it two ways, right? When you go to Cannes, when you go to Possible, which you guys have been at, you see our brand there, right? You see the activations we have in places like that, right? And so brands can choose to be a part of those activations at industry events. But then when we go on campuses like HBCU or in other places, it's more brand led at that point.
Right. So let's talk about the demand side first and what brands are looking for. So this kind of the way I think of it, there's always been some budget for brands where they want to literally reach the minority consumer. They have products they want to sell to the minority consumer. And then there's a different impetus, which is to help with sort of social justice, DEI, put dollars towards the Black creators. So tell me how that relates, or if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're right. But I would say the latter part that you just said in terms of putting dollars towards social justice or putting dollars towards Black-owned media or diverse-owned media just because we're diverse-owned media, I think that those days are quite frankly fading away. I think that there was certainly a moment going back to 2020, 2021, right, where that existed. But I would say the overwhelming majority of the brands that we work with today and marketers who are reaching out to us are really looking to work with us because they are looking to reach a specific target audience. They're looking to accomplish something specific from goals perspective, whether it's moving more product or creating awareness, those sorts of things. So, and I think for us, working with us, you can accomplish that because of the scale that we've been able to amass, but also a lot of what we do, especially from an experiential perspective and especially from a content perspective, is rooted in culture, right? And so it's not just about reaching a particular audience. It's about reaching that audience when they're most engaged as well, too. And I think that is something that sets us apart from a lot of other media companies in the space.
Maybe it would be helpful if you gave us an example. Like, is there a mainstream brand that you've really helped reach that audience in a way that they couldn't do themselves?
Actually, this is an example I shared on stage at an event yesterday, actually. So we had a pharma brand come to us and ask us to help them drive immunizations and drive, making sure you're up to date with your shots, right? Immunizations and vaccines, and specifically needed our help in driving that in the Black community with Black men specifically, right? And so we thought about that, right? And we always like to lead with insights when it comes to these things, right? And so one of the insights that we know and we led with here is that we know that specifically when it comes to Black men, the barbershop is a place where Black men feel the safest, right? It's the place where we can have real conversations about family, sports, politics, you name it, it goes down in the barbershop, right? And because of that, we know that the barber carries a high level of influence as well, too, right? And so what we did is we looked at that and we came up with some really good custom content where we worked with a few prominent Black barbers, right? And we set it up in a way where the Black barbers were having really authentic conversations with their customers. And those conversations were around healthcare and taking care of yourself. And that ended up, for the pharmacy brand, that ended up, driving higher than their benchmarks Black men into specific pharmacies to get, their immunizations, to get their vaccines. So that, Ari, is sort of one example of what I'm talking about. And I'm being a little, I can't give you who the pharmacy is, but there isn't many of them. So
it's fascinating. So do you have like a Rolodex filled with prominent Black barbers? Like that's a list that I don't know.
Yeah, I particularly don't, but we have a fantastic brand strategy team that focuses on putting together these sort of unique opportunities. Another opportunity that we are actually in the process of rolling out right now in partnership with Everyday Health is called She's Good for Real. And it's a platform that we are launching that is specifically catering to empowering Black women when it comes to advocating for themselves related to healthcare. And that platform is launching with a number of different pillars focused on maternal health, balanced living, chronic conditions, and what we call mom in chief, because the mom really probably in any community runs the household, right? In many different ways. And there's a lot on their shoulders. And for us, thinking about a platform like that, we know that Black women at a higher rate develop conditions during childbirth, right? We know that Black women at a higher rate deal with a lot of stress. And so for us, thinking about, again, the advancement of our community, providing content that is culturally relevant, this is another platform that we are launching. And again, opening it up to brands to come in and go with us on this journey. And a great example of that is we're working with a diapers brand, specifically on the maternal health section, where, again, taking an insight, we know that Black babies are 2x more likely to develop eczema or 2x more likely to develop skin conditions, right, in their childhood. So what we're doing there is we're creating content. We're working with a dermatologist who's going to have real conversations with parents of newborns and provide tips and advice for parents that have newborns. And again, bringing in a diapers brand that's going to sort of be a part of that and sponsor it. So those are sort of two unique ways.
Awesome. That is really interesting stuff. Let's switch over to the supply side for a second, which is, I think, a little more fraught and a little more political. You have Josh Hawley in Congress talking about how advertising is avoiding conservative websites, and it's just like where you buy media seems to be political nowadays.
What isn't political in any, right, in the world today?
So you're saying this is becoming less important, the idea of steering dollars to different ownership groups. Can you give us? No.
Okay. No. I'm not saying it's becoming less important. I'm saying that I think that the mindset has changed, where if you go back 4 years ago, it was about we're gonna invest dollars here because this is a Black owned business, this is a Latin owned, this is a diverse owned business. Where now, yes, some of that definitely still happens, but I think, for us at Group Black, it's about how do we help marketers and brands reach diverse audiences at scale and build sustainable relationships with those audiences? Because all you have to do is look at the data, right? In terms of growth in population, in terms of future spend power, and know that if brands if they want to be around in the next, 10, 15, 20 years, they have to engage with diverse audiences.
Right. That totally makes sense. But there is also sort of a feeling like there isn't enough minority owned media, like that it's rare that you have to kind of go needle in a haystack to find the right places to buy your ads if you're not running a specific campaign for that audience group.
Yeah. I mean, again, look at if we look at the numbers, I think it's something like 7% of all media is minority owned, right? That right there tells you that there's not enough to even fulfill all the pledges that were made, 4 years ago, right? So that is certainly true. But at the same time, for us at Group Black, that's one of the reasons why we have diversified our offerings in so many ways, right? When you talk about the pure media piece versus the content piece that I talked about versus the experiential, because by doing that, by diversifying your offering, that's a great way to, one, be able to capture more dollars, but then two, to be able to create integrated campaigns for these brands to help them reach their goals. You both know this. There's not one way in particular that a brand is going to reach their goals. Or running in a million impressions programmatically, you got to do more than that, right?
And there's a difference between something that's minority owned versus something that's minority audience. And I think that it's a little easy to check a checkbox like, oh, our CEO is a minority, so therefore you're on the list, versus having an impact on the community.
Exactly. And that's why I go back to what I said earlier in terms of how do you lead with culture, right? As well, too, because there's an impact there for the brand. There's an impact there for the community as well, too, in terms of making sure the dollars go back and get reinvested in, some of the smaller, diverse-owned companies that need the revenue to grow. I mean, go back to, when we were first created, and by the way, we're only 3 years old as a company. One of the reasons why we were created when we were by our three co-founders is because we looked at the landscape and saw that, due to the lack of historical investment in Black-owned media, a lot of the companies that exist today maybe don't have the resources to have the proper ad tech in place, right? Don't have the resources to have a sales team in place to knock on the doors in the agencies, so on and so forth. And that's one of the benefits of working with Group Black as well, too, because if you don't have those resources, guess what? Our sales team has a ton of relationships with all the major holding companies, all the Fortune 500 brands. We have, one of the things that I built at Group Black was building out our revenue operations, building out our client services team to provide that for minority owned businesses that really don't have that. And then even, I know this is close to the heart of both of you. If you think about, the conversation around cookie deprecation, IDs, so on and so forth, right? These topics and subjects, the companies that don't have the money to invest in sort of the resources to be at the forefront of some of these conversations, they get left behind, right? As we start to move forward and develop more technology, the companies that don't have the resources to do it, they can get left behind, and we can play a role in helping and make sure that they don't get left behind.
Yeah, I think if we're going to cover in the news of the week, the trade desk's like premium top 100 publishers, in a sense, that's not great for longer tail publishers who might have really dedicated audiences. I want to repeat a point that someone made to me. Maybe, I don't know if you want to comment on this or not, but it was sort of in the wake of the Colossus thing, which was a disaster. But someone said to me, if you really care about social justice in digital advertising, you would be better off spending your money on quality journalism in Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, and Georgia than necessarily buying Black-owned media.
My immediate reaction to that is that there are hundreds of local Black-owned media news organizations throughout the country, right? And because of various reasons, most of them have not seen the dollars that were pledged years ago, right? And I say various reasons because a lot of those organizations are small. A lot of them are news organizations. And as you both know, that's like the first check thing that gets cut, right? When you look at brand safety and those sorts of things, right? And so I think figuring out how to, as an industry, how to support local news businesses I think is super important in multiple ways.
That makes total sense. Couple things about you that the listeners may or may not know. So number one, you're an adjunct professor in addition to your day job.
Yes.
You're an adjunct professor at Keene. And then, is it Keene?
Kane, yep. Mm-hmm.
Kane, yeah.
Yep.
And then also, you might be like one of the most experienced ad ops professionals that I know of or in the space. So you've been doing ad ops, I think, as long as the industry has been, in existence.
24, 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this has been like a refreshing, different conversation than we traditionally have, we're so deep in like programmatic and MFA and all that stuff. But, just taking a step back, because you mentioned revenue ops and building out systems, is there anything like new and cool and interesting, in and around like ad ops or just more broadly, like programmatic that you're looking at, thinking about, maybe even implementing at Group Black?
I'll answer that in two ways. I think, and I've written about this in the past, I think that people that are looking to get in our industry, I think starting out in ad operations is one of the best places you can start, because it is one of the roles where you can get a really good sort of holistic view of what happens in our industry, because you see the IOs come in, so you touch sales, right? You're at the forefront of product and data, right? You're at the forefront of understanding campaigns and performance, so on and so forth. It's that foundation that I've, quite frankly, have used to build my career. You mentioned, me being the CMO at Live Intent previously, and now president of advertising at Group Black. So that, my ad operations background continues to be the foundation in which I build my career on. So I think it's a fantastic place to start. I think from a programmatic perspective, programmatic was one of the first things I helped build when I got to Group Black, because I just saw that it was the opportunity to help get dollars faster to our collective members and our supply partners. Obviously, it's a way that marketers want to buy. It continues to grow more and more. One of the things that we are looking to do at Group Black in the back half of this year is to launch our own Group Black audience and insights platform. And there's a few reasons for that. One, as I said earlier, our conversations with marketers and brands are really focused on how do you help them reach diverse audiences at scale and build sustainable relationships to do that, right? And for us, in order to do that and continue to do that, we want to be in a position where we can continue to educate marketers about the audiences that they aim to reach, right? And not the education in a way of, male versus female, age, all the sort of basic stuff that we talk about in our industry, but more along the lines of, where are these audiences, where the people that you aim to reach and build relationships with, where are they most engaged? Where are they spending the majority of the time? What types of products do they buy? What else are they interested in? So on and so forth. So as you asked me, Eric, about programmatic and media, that's one of the things where I'm focused on, again, the second half of the year, is taking it to the next level in terms of helping marketers and brands reach diverse audiences. And again, what's important to that is building sustainable relationships. Anyone can reach anyone anywhere, right? You can put an ad in front of anyone anywhere, but it's that relationship over time that I think is what's super important to brands.
All right. On that was a great conversation. We're going to take a quick break, come back with news of the week, the trade desk, some personnel changes, AI, Perion, lots of good stuff. This podcast is brought to you by Innovid and their Harmony initiative. Innovid believes that TV should be open for everyone and controlled by no one. And the time to make that vision a reality is now. That's why Innovid created Harmony, an industry-wide initiative to address the biggest challenges facing CTV advertising today. By optimizing at the infrastructure level, Harmony aims to improve efficiency, enhance transparency and control, and increase ROI, all while reducing carbon emissions and providing better viewing experiences for all. Find out more and get involved at innovid.com/harmony.
And we're back. We've got a lot of news this week, so we'll jump right into it. So there was an announcement on Monday about PayPal. and hiring an executive and launching or announcing the launch of a new business. So there were two quotes that chimed in immediately. The first, Eric Seufert, "Everything's an ad network." The second, James Burrow from Market, "Payments are the new cookies." But I think Ari wins this one with this thing. I don't think you tweeted or posted, but you should have. Dr. Mark from Uber. Dr. Mark cancels his Uber and goes to PayPal. That was like an extremely
It was
good
right
line.
there, man. It's like 12 minutes till it's coming, and it's making weird U-turns and stuff, and you got to go. I was a little shocked. I mean, I thought Dr. Mark had, first of all, Dr. Mark's interview with us at Marketecture is one of our free.
classic.
It's a really good interview, and it's free. So go to Marketecture TV to listen to it. I thought that guy had pretty much the best job in ad tech. Like, he was building something from scratch that was going to go to $1 billion in 3 years. High profile company, stock price is great, ad management's great. PayPal must have just, emailed him a dump truck of money.
Yep. So Dr. Mark right there goes to PayPal, and it was announced in the Journal. We'll put it in the newsletter. So a couple of things here. So PayPal already has an ad product. It's called Advanced Offers. Basically, it uses AI and PayPal data to help merchants target users with personalized promotions. What they plan to do is, classic Eric Seufert, start an ad network. So the plan is to expand into non-endemics, basically use PayPal purchase data to target consumers on other platforms, which, there's a few people that, can do this at scale really well. And I think Dr. Mark, given Uber, both endemically and non-endemically on and off platforms, has proven to be one of the folks that are best at this. Two things interesting here, and I'd love you guys to riff on it. So number one, PayPal has obviously a large audience across PayPal and Venmo, 6.5 billion payments from around 400 million consumers. So there's real scale here if you sort of believe that payments are the next cookies. And then B, this is number two, right? So JP Morgan Chase announced a similar move earlier this month. So I think it's will we see more of these, just every FinCo becoming an ad network? And then B, what do you think about this idea of payments being the next cookies and like a really interesting way to use data to target consumers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to jump in on that first. I think we will see more of it, as we think about, again, understanding people and building relationships with people. I mean, there's no better way to understand someone than to see where they're spending their money, right? And I mean, that goes into understanding them, interests, likes, everything, under the sun there. So I think we will see more of it. But I think like anything else in our space, I kind of wonder when we get to a point of saturation and commoditization across that type of information.
Yeah, I think a couple things. First is it feels like Cardlytics has kind of hit some problems here because they were sort of the default offer provider for fintech, and it looks like the big guys are in-housing. Second point I'll make is that the credit card companies have been doing this for a long time, licensing their data, because if someone shops at or eats a meal at a Red Lobster, that's, very strong signal. And you can use that for advertising or for conversion data or whatever. And the last point is I would say keep an eye on Square.
Yeah, I feel like Eric wants to make a comment about Red Lobster.
I think you did too. Okay, I'll ask it. All right, what does purchase data from Red Lobster say about a person?
Well, it says they saw a Red Lobster ad and they should be attributed to that ad.
Exactly. Well said. And clearly Square could be a monster. Okay, cool. Well, congrats to Dr. Mark, and we'll keep an eye on PayPal in this category. News number two, TTD Trade Desk ranks the top 100 publishers for the quote unquote premium internet. So they released a list of 100 premium publishers. And it's interesting. We'll post the link and there's an infographic of the list. They're basically all CTV publishers in the beginning. So I think it's interesting that the definition of a publisher is now becoming streamers, right? And their goal is to obviously position TTD as a portal for premium content. These are 100 of the SP 500 plus, which is their product that allows brands to transact with high quality publishers using criteria like ad experience quality and SPO. And I think it's interesting that they're moving towards highlighting publishers, sort of over over audience, clearly in response to cookies and MFA and all that stuff. I guess the question for you guys is what do you think about this idea of the top publishers largely being CTV? It's number one. And then number two, back to your question earlier about the long tail, like what does this emphasis on large publishers, big names mean for the long tail publishers, including diverse owned publishers?
I would quote Admiral Akbar here and say it's a trap. Basically,
go on.
If the trade desk sets the bar on what a publisher that's acceptable in some form is, and that bar is up to them, they can put anything they want in that qualification. Same way Google search over time makes changes to its ranking and says, oh, we're going to downrank sites that have high latency, or we're going to downrank sites that have too many ads. That control is very, very powerful. And the trade desk, it is doing something very reasonable about having effectively an include list that they maintain. At what point did they say, well, you really have to participate in UID2 in order to be on the list? They have so much power when they control the list, and the list becomes a default where it's pre-checked on every campaign. You have to uncheck it, or you have to pull down a drop-down menu to add people who aren't on the list. It's a power move.
Yeah, I'm not gonna dispute what Ari just said, but I will say that just from a pure demand perspective and where people are spending their time, right? Video, CTV, that's where audiences are most engaged. That's where they're going. I mean, even at Group Black, we see that, the overwhelming majority of our demand is video and CTV at this point in time. So yeah, I mean, listen, I'm sure that the trade desk has their own sort of motives for doing the things that they do as well too, but that's where audiences are going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have a follow-up question, which is, when they call it S&P 500, did they get Standard & Poor's to let them do that? Or is this, like, what is Standard & Poor's doing? Just sitting around letting the trade desk call it S&P 500? That seems like a line crossed. I'd be sending a cease and desist on that one.
To be clear, it's not called S&P 500. It's called SP 500 Plus.
Yeah, that's not confusing.
So one would presume that they've done the work from a trademark perspective. And oftentimes, and again, I have some esoteric knowledge because I've been in trademark wars. If it's not for the same use, the same, sort of like use case and purpose, you can get away with something that sounds similar if it's applied to a completely different industry.
Sure. Shout out to Math Ventures of Cleveland, Ohio, right?
No comment. Moving on. So this one was interesting. You found this one, Ari. So Klarna is making big marketing expense cuts with AI. So we'll post the link. I'll read out some highlights here. So Klarna reduced sales and marketing spend by 11% in Q1 2024, saving $10 million annually through AI-driven efficiencies. This includes a 25% reduction in external marketing agency expenses, achieving $4 million in savings. Interesting. We'll keep going. Number two, saved $6 million in image production costs using tools like Midjourney, DALL-E, and Firefly. And then from a production standpoint, generating over 1,000 images in Q1 and reducing the image development cycle from 6 weeks to 7 days. They also implemented an AI-powered copywriting tool. It's called Copy Assistant, handling 80% of copywriting tasks. So back up. They reduced agency expenditures. They reduced production costs and skyrocketed their ability to produce more, both in terms of images and written copy, all using AI. So questions for the group. Number one, we align that this is like some pretty impressive stuff.
It's great to save millions of dollars as a public company. So yeah, I think they deserve some kudos. I wonder how much of this is them trying to make news and trying to like show themselves as innovators, because they also were the ones who just a couple months ago announced that they could basically replace their entire customer service team with AI and get better results. So they're definitely pushing hard both to adopt and to make waves with their adoption.
I think it's definitely impressive. I think we will see more of this. I mean, we're trying to do some things ourselves at Group Black using different AI-powered tools. Going back to my podcast earlier, I mean, we do a lot of the copywriting, video images we put out on social. That's all AI powered for us as well too. So there definitely are benefits in terms of saving time and cutting costs.
I think you have to watch out for longer term effects, right? It could be that you save money in the short term because you have fewer people creating imagery, but you may have some imagery that ultimately turns off your audience. You don't even realize it, or that.
Well, you got to pay attention to that,
Yeah.
right? You need to make sure you can't just say, okay, I'm going to let the machines do it and not pay attention to what's going on.
You might be optimizing the thing that's really, really easy to measure, which is your cost, and you might not be able to measure something that takes 6 months or 9 months to show up in your numbers.
Yeah, and hopefully by saving by reducing costs here, right? They're moving individuals into other positions to do that, that analysis, right, and stay on top of what's going on with the business.
That's the question. So last year, there was a wave of EBITDA enhancements through cost cutting, and largely like human cost cutting. Like people were laid off, and there was significant downsizing. I wonder if in an era where public investors got a taste of EBITDA driven cost cutting enhancements, this is another thing that we're going to see, where companies talk about how they're using AI more and more to just like cut costs. So I'm wondering if this is a little bit of a canary in a coal mine for 2024, 2025.
Yeah, also, when you think about the mechanics of how a big scaled organization does marketing, you may have a big idea like the Just Do It coming out of your agency and the expensive photo shoots with the NBA players, but then they have to recut that 10 million times so that they have the end cap at the Foot Locker, and they have the coupon in the magazine, and there's so much production work that goes into operating a scaled multi-channel advertising media company. That's where so much of this AI automation could make a big difference in turnaround times and costs.
Absolutely. No, it's a great point. Okay, moving on. So this is another interesting one. Perion closes Content IQ a week after AdExchanger exposes them as an MFA farm via some Sincera findings. So Perion acquired this company, Content IQ, for just over $73 million 4 years ago. This is pretty impactful. They laid off, basically immediately all of their content producers, including editors and freelance writers, and all of the websites under Content IQ, names like Boredom Therapy, Film Oracle, and others, are now offline. So they took this very, very seriously. They shut down the company. They shut down the properties. Like they, laid off writers. I think this is a big deal. What do you guys think?
They're absolutely shocked that MFA was going on in this bar. To quote Casablanca. It's like it was a division of their company. They didn't know it was happening. I mean, come on. Perion's having a bad year. I mean, they have this. They had a big hit from Bing arbitrage things earlier this year. That's kind of hard to understand. But I think this is a huge victory for journalism and for AdExchanger. They continue to really push on finding out what's going on in our ecosystem and highlighting what they think is not correct. So good for them.
Does this give you hope?
I mean, we've certainly seen more of these types of stories in recent times than we have in previous years. So yes, on the hope side.
Yeah, I think also the economics just get worse and worse as the industry, I hate using the word the industry, but as the DSPs and the buyers get more information and more ability to avoid sites that don't provide ROI. I'm not even saying MFA. I'm saying sites that provide bad ROI on advertising are getting squeezed out through the efforts of the verifiers with their MFA measurement, through the DSPs with their include, exclude lists, etc. So this probably was also a declining opportunity for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on. So Google's search API algorithm is leaked. So a leak of 2,500 pages reveals internal details on how Google's search algorithm operates, challenging the company's transparency about its process. So these leaked documents include info on the search API, data collection from web pages and users and stuff like that. So the interesting thing is some content appears to contradict Google's public statements around the use of things like Chrome data in rankings and how that plays into it. All right, you found this one, so
this
dig
is
into
kind
it.
of just a fun, interesting story. We usually don't cover SEO. SEO is like like paleontology. It's like, those people are in a different world and they do their thing, and it's fun to watch them totally freak out. It's like this is just the greatest thing that could ever happen to SEO people. 2,500 pages to obsess about, and they're already finding things that are contradicting their rules of thumb on some issues. There's some rule of thumb that every page in SEO had to have like at least 2,000 characters, and everyone was using that for years. And it turns out that's just nonsense. So it's kind of fun to watch this. I'm sitting by the sidelines eating popcorn. I just looked at the API. I did some quick searching to see if I could find anything about the sandbox, about Pappy, about topics, all the stuff that I'm interested in, and none of it was there. So I think this is really just kind of a fun little sideshow.
I think there will be updated editions of best practices for SEO for books that'll come out soon.
It kind of begs the question why Google isn't transparent about this stuff. Why does Google continue to have this relationship with SEO where they intentionally don't tell anybody how it works? I kind of understand because they think the bad guys will be able to manipulate the algorithm, but it seems like the good guys knowing how to build websites for SEO would outweigh the negatives. But there are people who spend their entire lives on this subject, and I'm just a dilettante, so I don't know.
Speaking of Google, our friend Adam Heimlich from Chalice, he released a YouTube video yesterday, which I haven't had a chance to watch yet. So tell us about it.
I
watched it on 1.5 speed, to be frank. Dude is like, he's going to be a professor or something. He starts out with General Sherman walking across Atlanta. Like, he does the first 5 minutes on General Sherman and then he's going into like Standard Oil. Like, it's like really intense. So anyway, if you really want to hear about Google, skip forward to minute 13. Because the first 13 minutes are like Rachel Maddow and her A block about the history of the world. And then he gives a pretty interesting discussion about Google and Lina Khan and the attempt Google did to buy off the DOJ to get rid of the jury trial. So quality work. I mean, I really appreciate putting the effort and trying to educate, and it's great that Adam's on top of this. There's a clip of him with looking like a lawyer. Like, if you know Adam, he has long hair and it's kind of hippie looking, but apparently when he went to testify in Congress, he cleaned himself up. So that's kind of a fun little image. I mean, I know I'm going to get hell for this. Adam was just going to jump in my DMs like in about 10 seconds, but it's cool.
Amazing. Maybe we'll one more fun one, and we'll call it. So maybe not so fun if you work in the film industry. This was apparently the worst Memorial Day box office ever for the movie industry. So year to date, box office was 500 million versus 750 million previous years at this time. So I guess the question is this because of the writer's strike? Right, like I think the timeline for a lot of the big all movies, but the big box office draws was pushed back because of that 6-month strike. Or is this something more? Or is this just like we're seeing yet another piece of evidence for the shift to streaming and people sitting at home? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I can give my personal opinion on it. I think it probably has more to do with streaming than anything else. I mean, movies hit, the streaming services so fast these days. So a lot of the movies, whether they're superhero movies or other things that maybe the kids want to see, you wait a few weeks and it'll be on one of the streaming services. The last movie I went to see in the actual movie theaters was the Bob Marley movie. And then I feel like a month later, it was on Paramount. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I don't really know too much about the specifics. I think there's a little bit of streaming, a little bit of the writer's strike. It could be that just in particular, The Fall Guy and Furiosa didn't resonate with viewers. People are really waiting for the Wolverine movie later this year to maybe change things. It's interesting. I also shout out to a pod I like a lot called The Town, which is like the movie business podcast. And they did a pretty good overview of this week. They're not affiliated with us, but I learned a lot listening to it. Definitely something to watch, because if consistently box office is in decline, I think it'll change the way movies are produced, the way they're budgeted in particular. The budgets will go down a lot, and it won't be great for the exhibitor companies.
What's a movie that you have to see in the movie theater? Let's say it's like some sort of series or a multi-part. Like what's one that you will always see?
Well, Dune 2 just blew my mind. Like, that was crazy to see that in the theater.
Anything Star Wars, I have to go to movies to see.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, it's it's no longer the Rocky movies. I guess it's the Creed movies. I got to see him in the movie theaters. Anyway, this was a fun one. Why don't we take it home, Mark?
Absolutely. So this is a great episode. Kerel Cooper, the president of advertising for Group Black. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you guys having me and glad to be a part of the alumni now.
Exactly. So listen to his podcast at Minority Report. And then Eric Franchi has a new podcast called Open Market. You want to smash that subscribe button. Eric, thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys, as always. See you next week.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.